Hi, I'm Nicholas Lodge and would like to introduce you to my new Flower Pro Calla Lily set. So this, again, innovative product, part of the Flower Pro family, enables us to make the spadix for the center of the calla lily, and then this is for the spathe, which is like the petal that wraps around the outside. So this, obviously when we make calla lilies, we can have the option of making these in different sizes. Now this veiner has also been designed, so when you watch some of my other new Flower Pro YouTubes, like for example, we can use this to make tulip leaves, we can use it also to make hosta leaves, we can use it for lily of the valley leaves. So it's basically can be used for large leaves as well. Now I'm going to start off first of all just showing you the calla lily. These are the 5 sizes of calla lily. So this is the small, the medium. This large one I will be showing, so I haven't dusted this one yet. And then we have the extra large, and then we have the extra large calla lily. So you can see here, this is obviously showing you the beautiful span of sizes, but also some of the different colors calla lilies come in. Smaller varieties like this have become very trendy and very popular to use in bridal bouquets, and a lot of like florists and even supermarkets, grocery stores sell a lot of the smaller calla lily varieties as well. Obviously the classic calla lily, which is typically white, is a beautiful, very stunning contemporary style flower used in weddings, and it's obviously has inspired a lot of like Art Deco style, obviously often reflects sort of calla lilies in Art Deco. So it is very much a classic flower to use for a wedding cake. Now when we make the calla lily, I'm going to show you first of all the large size calla lily, so the extra large size one, which is going to be this large one here. Alright, as you can see, this calla lily here is about 16 centimeters, about just over 6 inches in length, and this would obviously look stunning on a Christmas arrangement. You could use this with obviously white flowers, you could use it with greenery, you could use it just on its own, you could use it with eucalyptus, so it can be used for many different styles. So let's get started on the center. So for the extra large size calla lily, these are 18 gauge wires, and of course calla lilies can go on to full length wires. This is a full length wire which is like 14 inches long, or of course you could use half length wires. This when I do the extra large calla lily, because of course there's a huge difference between the weight of this and the weight of this. Alright, you can see this is obviously a lot smaller, so of course we're going to use for each of the calla lilies, we're going to use a different gauge wire. So here I have 3 18 gauge wires, okay? And I'm going to take these 18 gauge wires, I'm going to take some full width floral tape. I'm using here just a light green floral tape. And with my light green floral tape, I'm just going to cover over. Now the reason I'm using 3 wires is this gives me not only the strength I need to hold this flower because it's a heavy flower, but also enables me to get, having 3 wires creates a triangle. This will mean you will get a obviously a round stem. So you're just going to just, as I said, cover those. Now alternatives you can use instead of this would be, you can do calla lilies on bamboo skewers, like a kebab skewer. Because bamboo is fibrous, okay, so which means you can actually sort of bend bamboo like this. So you can actually use these for your calla lilies. This just sort of shows you some different sizes. So the idea is if you were doing for example, in the United States, typically our cake depth is 4 inches or 10 centimeters. In the UK, usually about 3 inches, about 7.5 centimeters. So what you do is you just would use a kebab and you tape down to, and so this part could then just be pushed straight into the cake, because a kebab skewer is basically a food grade product. So this could actually be inserted into your cake, and then your calla lilies will sort of be this part here, the stem. Other things that you can use, being resourceful, you can take, when you pick up your laundry and dry cleaning, you can take basically like just a hanger like this, and then you see if you actually cut that, so using your wire cutters, you just would cut there, and of course then you're going to have, and this is a stronger wire, so you just would use this one single wire and you just would tape down with your full width floral tape down this. But they said this is a very convenient way to make bigger flowers, and I use this on some larger flowers that I teach as a sort of a stronger support system, because in floral 18 gauge is the thickest wire, so even one 18 gauge wire wouldn't really be strong enough for this size calla lily. I'm using here just a yellow flour modeling paste or gum paste. This is the Renshaw brand. I'm just using this straight out of the pack, all right? This is a very simple center, so we don't have to add any sugar paste or rolled fondant to this. And of course, you could also make this lighter, so if you wanted a more of a, because sometimes the Calla Spadix is more of a sort of paler yellow, you could totally, of course, mix yellow and white together. You can also start with white paste and add some lemon gel color to that as well. And when we're making the Calla, we're going to make the ball of paste. So when we're doing the large Calla, the extra large Calla, all right, we're going to be using a number 11 size ball of paste. Okay, so we're going to just take a number 11 size ball of paste. Okay, so you can see this is going to be a number 11. So this sits 1/3 below the hole, 2/3 above the top. If you were making, say, 3 Calla, you'd measure those, you'd put the other little balls of paste underneath here. I'm going to use a little silicone mat here to work on. This is just an easy way to roll this out, okay? And this large size, remember in the insert it's going to have all the sizes, but this longer Calla center, this is actually what it's going to look like, all right? So this is going to be about 7 centimeters in length, all right? So it's about 2 3/4 inches in length, all right? So it's going to be the large Calla center, or the extra large Calla center. So we're going to take your paste here. I'm just going to condition this with a little bit of vegetable shortening, white fat. So I'm just going to condition this. And then what I'm going to do here, I'm going to just roll this into a little sausage. Just a little bit less than the length we need it. So in this case, it's going to be a little bit less than 7 centimeters, about 5 centimeters. Now I'm going to take my size guide, which is obviously, so it said this is going to be a 7 centimeter. So what you do is you hold your thumb and first finger here. We're actually going to brush egg white over that 7 centimeter at the end of the wire. So you're going to take your, because you want to make sure that this is attached all the way down, okay? So just going to pop that to my wet towel. We're then going to take your little sausage of paste. I'm going to then stick the sausage up the wire till it goes almost all the way to the top. You can feel it's pretty much right there. And then I'm going to first of all just make the top slightly pointed, and then I'm now going to stretch this down. So technique wise, it's a little bit like milking a cow or a goat. It's a stretch and pull-in technique, like when we milk a cow. And so this is basically going to give us the 7 centimeter length, all right? So it wants to be slightly tapered on the end. And then we're going to use just a little bit of cornstarch in my little cornstarch puff. So on the bottom here, I'm going to hold my thumb and first finger, you can see, in almost like a V shape. So this is going to give you this bulbous base. And then you can just gently roll this on your little silicone mat, or you can do this on your little small foam mat, a mini mat, just to make that sort of level this out, all right? So you see how it's going to be sort of a sausage shape, and then you're going to have this slightly pointed end, all right? And then you're going to have a rounded bottom. Now this is the texture mat we're going to use for the Calla. So we're going to texture the top 2/3 only when we do all of the centers. So we're going to start off here, you see, and I'm just going to just roll this down the mat here like that. So you see how it's going to give you this beautiful texture. Just roll the way to the end, and then I'm going to just roll at a slight angle, because obviously we've got a slightly angled top here. Just again go down there like that. So you see how this is going to texture the top 2/3 of your Calla. Okay. Once we've done that, next step is going to be to put some sugar onto this. So we're going to use, for the larger size, I'm actually going to use 2 different types of sugar. These are sugar crystals, all right, so these are larger sugar, often used on cookies. So a lot of like cake decorating supply shops would have this online shop, but it's like a larger, you can see it's like a larger crystal. So it's used for cookies and things. So we're going to use that for the larger size one. And then this is sanding sugar, again used in cake decorating for cookies, mostly for cookies. But you can also use just granulated sugar as well, which is a little bit finer than this, but will also work. So for the small, medium, and large, which I'm going to show that separately, I'm going to use the finer one. For the extra large and basically the extra large, the 2 largest size ones, the white ones, these are both done with the sugar crystals. So we're going to take, so you have several options here. You can use confectioner's glaze. So this is confectioner's glaze, which I've shown in some of the obviously U-tubes on blackberries and things like that. We can also use piping gel, so you can take a little bit of piping gel. You can also use Super Bond, which is a thick glue. So it's something that's sticky. The reason why I wouldn't use egg white, because egg white is a little bit more sort of liquidy, and what will happen is when you use egg white, although the sugar will stick, when you actually, the center is dry, if you just touch it, the egg white comes off. So when you're dusting the flour and you want to put a little bit of color on your spadix, basically the sugar will just come away from the egg white. So you want something that's going to make it a little bit sticky. And so when you are using this, you take your confectioner's glaze, or as I said, you can use, as I said, piping gel or like Super Bond here, and you're just going to just brush this onto the surface. But so piping gel works great, and it's obviously a sticky product. So you just brush this over that texture part, and then you're just going to roll this into the sugar like this, and you see how that's going to give you this beautiful textural detail onto the spadix. Okay, so that's how we would do the, so that's like the extra large size one. Okay, and then coming down in size, so then when we do the that's the extra large one, which is the biggest size one, so that makes this size Calla here. Okay, and then when you come down to the next one down, which is the extra large, that is going to be done in the same way as that, but that one is going to be a 10 small. So this one is number 10 small, and this is made 6 centimeters. But remember, all of this sizing is in your obviously in your packaging. Okay, so those would be for like the 2 bigger ones. And then the other difference is this is 3 18 gauge wires, this is 3 20 gauge wires. Okay, because it's a little bit smaller. Now when you come on to the smaller Callas, like these 3 here, the large, medium and small, we're just going to use one single 20 gauge wire for this one, and then a 22 gauge wire for this one. All right, and so on these ones, all you're going to do is you're going to just take your 20, this is your 20 gauge wire here. We're going to just tape down with half width floral tape. And the reason why I tape is that when we put the egg white on this to push the yellow part on, if you don't cover this with floral tape, it really doesn't sort of stick to this, to the paper. Now, when we do the large size, which is going to be this size, which I'm going to show the coloring on here, this is going to be a number 8 size, and this is going to be just over 5 centimeters. Okay, so here we're going to take a number 8 size ball of paste. And then once you've got your number 8 size ball of paste, again, we will just texture it, put a little bit of shortening into this, and then just do exactly the same technique, but I just wanted to show you the finer sugar. So again, just going to make this into just about a 2 centimeter, because as I said, this is going to be just over 3.2 centimeters in length. So you're just going to brush this on the top here. So that's going to be so 5.2 centimeters on this one. Remember, all of these sizes are obviously on your, so basically 2 inches or 5.2 centimeters. Okay, and then you're going to just brush the egg white just onto that part of it. Okay, and then again, we're going to just insert this into the paste. It's going to now, just remember, just taper your top and just stretch this down until you get that to the, you want to make sure your wire goes all the way to the top. And so remember, this is going to be 5.2 centimeters, it's about 2 inches, so just a little bit more on that. There we go. And then we're going to take your, like I did on the larger one, you're going to use a little bit of corn flour, cornstarch on your fingers here. Just roll this to level this up. Now you can also, if you don't have a little silicone mat like this, you can actually use the back of the Calla main mat. See, this works really well as a sort of like a little working surface. You can use this like a little mini board, and then you can roll on that. So remember, this is going to be 5.2 centimeters. And then this one, exactly the same technique. We're going to take this, you're going to roll over your 2/3 of that. You won't need to come all the way down there because obviously it's a smaller, and then again you're just going to just use that at an angle. Alright, and then this one I'll show you with some confectioner's glaze. Now remember, confectioner's glaze is a food grade shellac, okay, and when you use confectioner's glaze, you will need to use like a glaze cleaner. Alright, so this is a glaze cleaner, because if you're using a brush like this, it will just get hard. It's not water soluble, so you need to, as I said, use a glaze cleaner. So you're just going to take your, so this is some confectioner's glaze, so I'm just going to use a little bit of this, just going to brush this onto, again, the 2/3. The reason why we're only texturing and putting the sugar on 2/3 is we don't want texture here or sugar here, because we won't be able to wrap the top of the calla around this. So then you see what I would do is when you finish your project, you're just going to use your glaze cleaner, and this will just clean your brush, okay? And that just makes sure that you don't have any obviously glaze in there. This will evaporate, so just make sure you put the lid on that just when you finish your project. And you see then this one is the fine sugar, so this is, as I said, sanding sugar, or as I said, you can use like normal table sugar, granulated sugar, but you see how it's going to give you that sort of finer texture onto there. So this will be how you would do your little spadix or spadix, and you can actually see here these are the size of the spadix, and as I said, this is going to all be on in your packaging, so this will actually have the 3 sizes here, and then you've got obviously like this one and this one here. This is and then this is actually, this one doesn't have the sugar on it yet, but it sort of shows you the 5 sizes. All right, so remember, these 2 are done with the bigger sugar crystals, these are done with the finer sugar crystals. Now these will need to dry. Small calories here, probably about 3 to 4 hours, I would suggest. On the larger calories, I would leave these probably about 5 to 6 hours. I use a food dehydrator a lot, so, and the other thing is you can actually, you know, dry them and then put the glaze on. You don't necessarily need to put the sugar on straight away. If you were going to put them into a food dehydrator where you're laying them down, it's probably better just to dry them at this stage. All right, then when they're dry, take them out, put the glaze on, put the sugar on, okay? But if you're hanging them or standing them into a styrofoam block or a cake dummy, you of course can do the sugar, and then that will dry. Now this mat is also very useful for other application in cake as well. So for example, if you were doing a cake and you wanted to make like a grass texture, you can basically take this mat and just go all over the surface of it, so it gives a beautiful like grass texture. You're doing a novelty cake, sculpted cake, you can use this. I also use this to make almost like an effect like leather, so you see it looks like a leather book, and what you would do there is you just would take a piece of plastic wrap cling film. So if you're doing, let's say, the cover of a book, you would roll out your sugar paste, your rolled fondant, and in here I put plastic wrap or cling film on the top. So then when you do that, you're going to it's not going to indent it as much. You're going to get the texture that goes through the plastic wrap. So you see how you get this, like, if obviously you see it looks almost like leather. So if you're doing like a vintage antique book, or for graduation a book, or something like that, it's, as I said, a nice way to do like leather. Also, even on a bag or a suitcase, you can use that. You can use it, for example, like you can roll on this, so you can do like almost looks like little snowballs, or you could do texture on things like teddy bears or animals as well. And then also another flower I do this on is the anthurium. Now the anthurium is the red tropical flower that has like almost like a heart-shaped petal to it. So when you do the anthurium, this is actually done in a very similar way. This is just an 18 gauge wire which is hooked. Not hooked, is bent like a curve shape. Here it's a little different, that you actually slide a carat of paste onto there, whether you've got egg white, and then what you do with this one is you actually would just go over the surface like this. So you see, you're just texturing it like that over the surface, and so that means then this doesn't have any of the sugar on, and then you let this dry, and then the spathe, which is the outside part, because the anthurium and the calla are from the same related family, so this is basically spadix or spadix, and then the spathe is the outside part of the flower. Okay, so those, as I said, very useful, and as I said, it's a little texture mat, so not only for making flowers but also for cake decorating as well, or other crafts. You know, those of you obviously in Flower Pro group that do you know, scrapbooking and things like that, so it's great for on your polymer clays, air drying clays to look like leather, to look like grass. So have a lot of fun with that. So now we're going to let those dry. When we come back, we're going to move on to actually make the spathe, which is the outside part of the calla. So now we're going to move on to the spathe, which is the outside part of the calla. This is the PDF downloadable template. So if you download this onto cardstock, obviously it's going to be a little bit more durable. As I explained in the introduction, you could also use a calla cutter. So if you do have, like for example, calla cutters, this is based on the extra large size cutter. But we've given you the template, so this will obviously mean you can duplicate the exact size. Now, as I explained, if you have cutters at home in your business that you already have, a metal cutter or plastic cutter, just sort of check which one is closest, and then of course you're going to need to make the corresponding spadix, which is the center part, to match the size of your calla. So you might have to adjust that based on the size of your cutter. So anyway, so you cut these out, so this gives you obviously the patterns here. So we've got the 5 different sizes of callallis. I'm going to actually be, first of all, showing you the large, extra large size one, which I'm going to do in white. So this is pretty much a classic calla lily. Now, using here white petal paste. This is Renshaw petal paste. You can also use, obviously, gum paste, homemade paste. Now remember, if you're using commercial paste like the Renshaw one, remember I do have a total YouTube which deals with how to prepare the paste. Remember, this is a vegan product, so both the Renshaw petal paste and also the Renshaw flower modeling paste doesn't contain egg white, making it suitable for vegan. So if you're using this to cut little decorations. So this doesn't have a lot of elasticity. So as shown in some of my other segments, as well as adding a little bit of vegetable shortening to this, because obviously a fairly large amount here, I actually have one of the 100-gram packs here. Okay, then I would also take some egg white. Now what I do here is I use a little pipette and I just suck up some egg white through the pipette here like so, and then you're going to then just put a little bit of fresh egg white into here. And what this will do, this is going to give your paste more elasticity. So for example, making some of the new products in my Flower Pro collection like peonies and some of the other flowers where we need a little bit more flexibility, you can add a little bit of egg white to the paste. And then what I do is I use either a companion tool, or you can take a toothpick and just put that in the end of the little tube there. You could then just keep that in the fridge, so then whenever obviously you need some egg white added to your paste, you've got that, and you can mix this in. So by adding the paste in, the egg white into the paste, and it conditions it, but also the little bit of egg white will just give a little bit more elasticity. Because the calla lily, although it's a very basic flower, we need to have a little bit of flexibility there when we actually finish it off and make the cone shape. Okay, so once I've just worked the vegetable fat shortening into this, and I have that, I'm going to just put a little cornstarch down. I'm going to roll out my paste. Now remember, your pasta machine is going to, if you're using a pasta machine, you're going to roll this out. This is going to be rolled out number 1 thickness, and so you just need to make sure you roll it to the width of the, in this case, the template. Alright, so we've got enough there. And usually when I'm working with thicker paste like this, I would just roll the end a little bit thinner on the edge here. So when we feed it through the pasta machine, it's going to then actually feed into the machine. So I'm going to use number 1 thickness here. I'm going to just feed this through the pasta machine, number 1. Just make sure it's not too wide. There we go. You're just going to put this onto about speed number 4 on here. You're going to come through the pasta machine. I'm going to take my pattern here, and I'm just going to cut around with a cutting wheel. So I'm using here a cutting wheel. For the extra large and the extra large and extra large size, I'm using the large end of the cutting wheel. And when I do the smaller size one, as you'll see, I'm going to use the smaller cutting wheel. So just going to cut around this. Of course, you could cut out 2 or 3 of these at a time. Now we're then going to put this into, got several options here. You can use a multi-flap, plastic flap. This is what we use to store gum paste flowers in. It's obviously got 2 pieces of plastic in, so you can just put this into a plastic flap like this. I'm also going to show you on the purple calla, the smaller one. What works great is actually the packaging from your calla lily. So this is the packaging, the bag your calla lily came in. So you can actually just cut down with a pair of scissors. So you have basically a little flap you can thin the paste in. And you can also use like a plastic folder. This is just like a sort of plastic folder. You could even use like a plastic bag as well. But as I say, just something to put it in. Page protector also works well. Now what I'm going to do here is on the extra large calla lily, which is the biggest size one, I'm using a jumbo ball tool here. And this is actually, when I use ball tools in my classes, you know, this is what we call the small ball tool, which obviously talked about when we did the ultimate filler flowers. This is a medium ball tool, this is a large ball tool, this is an extra large ball tool, this is an extra large ball tool. Okay, so this is the one I'm going to use. So there actually are, this is the largest end. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to thin the top 2/3 of the petal. So I'm going to just use this tool here just to go around your edge, because obviously number one is quite thick, so we want that thickness because of the veining and the shape of the calla, but we want to make the edge a little bit thinner. Now other options, you can use your thumb, alright, so you can use your thumb, and you can also use a rolling pin as well. So you can take, if you didn't have the balling tool, you could just use your rolling pin, and it's going to go around the top edge with your rolling pin. Now you notice when I've done this one, you see this is not symmetrical, alright? The three smaller ones are more of a symmetrical shape, but the extra large and extra large are not symmetrical. So when you cut this out, this is the way you cut it out, and this is the way it goes into the plastic flap, and this will all make sense in a moment. We then take it out of here, and we're going to put it onto the spade veiner. So I'm going to just use a here, and I'm going to put it onto the spade veiner like this. Is going to go onto the top of the spade veiner, and I'm going to press on here. So remember, I haven't turned this over. I'm going to press onto here with the, and I'm pressing on this larger one, the extra large and extra large, quite firmly. When I do this, as you'll see on the purple one, which I'm going to show you, I'm going to be a little bit more gentle because we don't need quite such heavy veining. Okay. Alright, so this is going to just vein one side. Calla backs don't really have any veining on them, but you'll actually get this textural detail coming through. So you're going to peel this off of the, you see how you're going to have this beautiful veining onto the spade. And again, you still keep this upside down, so we're still working on the same. I'm going to put this onto a large foam pad, and then I'm going to take my same balling tool I used to soften, and I'm going to go around your edge to give you like a little bit like how we would do roses. So we're half on the paste and half on the edge here, just to soften around your edge. Okay. Then I'm going to take, this is a piece of crepe foam, and I'm going to use the back of the crepe foam, because obviously this is quite a large flower. So then we're going to actually take this off, and then this is the first time we'll turn this over. So now this almost like hourglass shape is on the right hand side. It's been on the left hand side for everything else. We're going to take our companion tool. Alright, so the companion tool, the needle of the companion tool, you're going to put that at the top, and you're just going to actually pinch your little top of your, so you see how you're going to get this nice like little pinch on there. And then you're going to use your companion tool, you're using the shaft, and you're just going to pull it down the middle here like that. So you're just going to give you sort of like a little bit of a central line to follow. But remember, you're going to use the pointed end to create the tip, and then we're going to use this to go down basically the middle. So now we're going to take some egg white. So with my egg white here, I'm going to brush my egg white. So I'm going to come up approximately about 2.5 centimeters, about an inch, and I'm going to do this in a triangle. I'm going to come around that surface area. So I'm going to come up about 2.5 centimeters up, and then going to come up down here like that. So you see how you can see that in the camera, it's nice and shiny. So that's going to be our next step. You're going to take your dry spadix. So this is obviously dry now. All right, so this is one that I made earlier, so obviously it's totally dry. Now you're going to come in about 1 centimeter from the edge. So you're going to come in from here. And this is why you're going to make sure you obviously do this the correct way around, because we're going to take the left hand side, which is the plain side, and you're going to turn this around, and you're going to tuck it inside here, and you're then going to roll this up like almost like a jelly roll, like a jam roll, okay? And so you're going to roll this up, and then we're going to now, you see the top here, so all you need to do is worry about the top first. So you're just going to pinch around with your fingers, alright, because we want to make sure that you have a smooth base. And what I normally do at this point here, I would just use a pair of scissors. I would just cauterize the, so you're just literally just using your scissors, you're just going to cauterize the wire here, like so. So what this is going to do, just going to give you a nice sort of smooth base, alright? And you're going to use just a little bit of cornstarch on your fingers, and you're just going to smooth around your bottom here like that, because the lily family, the tulip family, the orchid family, they don't have any calyxes, alright? So it's a little bit more important to pay attention to your bottom here than it would on a flower like, for example, a rose, where a calyx is going to cover that over. So you're just going to just smooth that so you have a nice smooth bottom here on your flower. Now, we're going to hold this like a cornet, like ice cream cone, like a cornet, alright? Now, if you're making, when you're making a spray of calla lilies, you want to have, for example, this would represent a flower that's sort of a bud that's just opening out. So you would do it like that, and then you put a little bit of egg white just inside the edge, about a centimeter inside the edge of your petal here, and you close this up, alright? If you want to make the flower a little bit more open, you're going to hold this and you're now going to start to open out. So you're going to create a little bit of a lip here. So you see how you're going to create a little bit of a lip. So you see this would give you like a medium-sized calla lily open. And so again, then you would take this, you put a little bit of egg white, just a little bit inside the edge, and you would then take that, and then normally you dry this hanging upside down. If you're doing a large calla lily, so you'll see a little later on when I finish these off, I've got like a type 1, a mid-size one. When you do a fully open calla lily, but you see how I'm supporting this like you'd hold an ice cream, like a cornet, all right, or a cone, because what you want to do is support the weight of this. So when you do a fully open calla lily, you open this out, and then the other thing is the top actually curls over. So the top of the calla lily, the tip will actually curl over here. And you're just going to give a little bit of shape to this. Now if you do, you know, for those of you that haven't made a lot of sugar flowers, so the advantage of putting the egg white in here gives us a little bit more, as I said, flexibility. But if you do find your paste starts to dry a little bit on the edge, and you do get any little cracks or what, is just stretch crack, you can use your like spring action scissors or small scissors just to trim that up, okay? But anyway, so I'm going to make this as a fully open one. So I take this now, and I'm going to then put a little bit of egg white just inside the edge, going to seal that up. All right, and I'm going to hang this now upside down. So I'm just going to bring in my drying rack. So I'm going to use a large drying rack here. And then when you actually hang this, okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to use my crepe foam former here. And then I want the tip, because what we want the tip to sort of curl up a little bit like this. So you're just going to put that onto there like so. And then I'm going to bend that, I'm going to pop that into place. So you see how you're actually just sort of supporting that on the foam so that the actual tip will dry. So you can see here on the finished one, which I'll bring into camera, but you can see how the tip is going to dry like this. You see how it curves over. So just letting it support on the foam works very, very well. Okay, and that's how you would do the, that's how you would dry the flower. Okay, now when you do, I'm going to show you here the smaller size ones. All right, so this is the, obviously this is the large size, and then the medium size is obviously I've shown in the finished flowers in pale green, and then the small size one I've done in a peach color. But you can see here this is going to end up being a beautiful sort of orangey burgundy color one. It's going to be covered in a lovely green one. Okay, and so you of course can make calla lilies in all sorts of colors. So of course these could be made in white as well. But I use in a lot of my classes, you know, colored calla lilies, because it's a nice way to add an accent color. So anyway, so here I have some purple color, which I'm going to use for my calla lily here. And on this one, I'm going to cut this out, all right, so because there's a couple of differences here. So you're going to use the small cutting wheel. So I'm going to use the smaller size cutting wheel. And this is actually number 2 thickness, so in your directions. So the small, medium, and large is going to be cut out number 2. And then the extra large and extra, extra large will be cut number 1, okay? All right, so you're going to take this, remember, and then I'm going to show you here, this is actually the packaging from your, so hope you haven't thrown the packaging away, because I said that's something that you can use, works great to use. And then I'm going to just put my excess paste back into my bag. Now, because if you were making, say, on the cake I'm going to show you a little later, I'm going to show you 5 calla lilies on there, this size. So you could actually do like 3 at a time. If you're using like the large grey flap like this, you could obviously cut out 5 of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could thin them all out at one time, then you could take one out at a time, vein it, soften it, put it onto the flower, okay? So it makes it very quick for production work. So here, for the 3 smaller size ones, so just coming back to the one going down, the slightly smaller white one, which is the extra large, I use the extra large ball tool. And then when I do the small, medium, and large, I use a large ball tool. This is an FMM tool I'm using here. So again, we're just going to thin out your edge here. And those of you who work in air drying clay, because air drying clay is more clammy than using gum paste or petal paste. So what I do, if I was doing this in air drying clay, like hardy clay in purple, what I would actually do is just roll out my paste a little bit. I would put it into this acetate, which works wonderful. I then feed that through my pasta machine on number 2. So then when you peel it off, it's not going to stick to the rollers, or it's not going to stick to your surface. So the acetate works great for feeding paste through the pasta machine as well. But again, you can see how I'm just working the edge a little bit. Here is just the top 2/3, okay? Now, basic difference here is when we use the veiner, all right? Now, the other thing is this one, because it's symmetrical in shape, you don't have to worry so much about, as I said, obviously, whether you flip it over or leave it as is. But put it towards the top of the veiner, like this. And again, now we're just not going to press quite as hard. I'm being a little bit more gentle with my pressing, because we want, of course, especially on a little tiny one, so you see how you don't want to make the veins too, too pronounced. Obviously, just as I said, we're being a little bit more subtle here with our veining. I'm going to peel this off. Okay, and then we're going to take your, just going to go onto my pad here. I'm going to use the large balling tool. So whatever ball you use to soften the edge, you use that to soften on the soft side of the pad. And then again, we're going to then just take the crepe foam here. I'm going to flip this over onto your, or you could just use a regular piece of foam as well. Again, same concept. You're going to just bring this off the edge. So we're going to hold the needle part of here, and you're going to make just like a little point on there. You're going to get that little tiny nice sharp point. Okay, and then you're going to use your shaft of your, so you see you're just going to pull the shaft down to give you the lateral vein, the central vein. And then we're going to take your egg white on here. So with my egg white, again, I'm going to brush this here. I'm going to just come up about 1.5 centimeters, just about half an inch. So really same concept, but just all over that surface. Okay, and then we're going to take, so this is the size for the large calla lily. Again, you see you always want to come in a little bit here from the edge. Now, because this is symmetrical, all right, you're going to wrap this around, and you're going to again just sort of tuck that in, and you're going to roll this up, as I said, like a jam roll or jelly roll. And again, you see you have the same concept here. So we're now going to just roll this around. Now, if you, like for example, like in teaching classes, sometimes my students make the spadix, which is this part here, a little fat, all right? So that means when they wrap the spade around, you might see a little bit of the yellow. But because you've got number 2 is quite thick, all right, you're just going to basically just stretch that if you needed to, if your yellow is visible. All right, so you see how you're going to smooth this around. Again, if you need to trim this, so if it's a little bit open there. So again, you see how you could make the calla lily like tight like this, all right? You just would literally glue that, the flap, hang that upside down. You can start to open it out just a little bit. You can open it out just a little bit more, all right? And then ultimately, if you're going to make, now you will get a little bit of sugar, that's sort of fairly normal. And then again, you're going to just sort of create your lip, you see? And so you create the lip here. So you want the paste, you see how it comes up and then it comes out to create your lip. And although we've softened the edge of this, when you do that, you squash, you can actually just tweak your petal, so you see how you're going to get this nice natural movement in there. And then once you're happy with the position of your spade, little egg white just inside the edge. The reason why I don't put it right on the edge here with making sugar flowers with egg white is that if you put it right on the edge there, and when you press it round and you squash it, if any excess egg comes out, when you try and dust the flower, the dust isn't going to stick in that area. Okay? And then for the, as I said, a fully open one, your tip would go down like this. For an almost open one, the tip would go straight, but you still have your lip here like that. And again, your calla lily, that would just hang upside down. So you're just going to put that on your hanging rack, and then you see how this is the, here you can see the calla lily there, the shape of it, and that will be your calla lily. So these need to dry, again, smaller ones, 2 to 3 hours, obviously 4 to 5 hours on your larger one. So the next step is going to be the fun part where we're going to color these and finish them off. So now we're going to move on to the fun part, which is the coloring. So the calla lily is nice and dry now, and this is now ready for its coloring. So I'm going to show you the sort of classic white calla lily first. When we do the classic white calla lily, we're going to use some pearl dust. This is just a sort of a white, pearl white sort of type of dust, or just a pearlescent dust. You see here, so you're going to get this nice iridescent look to it. And we're going to use this color, and then once we've actually have got the pearl dust on, when we steam this, it will give it this nice waxy look. So I'm actually going to use a pump brush. A pump brush is, this is used for mineral makeup, and this is great to put the pearl dust in. And just going to give that a little pump, and then you're going to just brush this over the surface of the flower. So I'm going to brush this all over the surface. You see how you're going to get this sort of pearlescent look. I'm going to go into the inside of this as well. So we're going to have the pearlescent look on the calla lily, so it gives a beautiful luster to this. And I'd use this on flowers like gardenias and other flowers. Going to take then some green. This is a pale green, called prairie greens, just a soft green. And if you don't have a soft green like this, you could take a color like a moss green, which I'm going to be using as well, which is a stronger green, and then just add some cornflower, cornstarch to this to basically make it lighter. So we're going to use the green here, and I'm going to brush from the source away from the source. So I'm just going to sort of just work from the bottom of the calla lily. Now just be a little bit careful of that tip, alright, because that little tip is a little fragile, especially on the completely open flower. So you're just going to just brush here from the bottom. So see the color will dissipate as it sort of comes up. So you're going to get this nice sort of, it just sort of fades out onto here. So I'm coming up about 2.5 centimeters, about an inch up with there. I'm going to take the green brush. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to extinguish any green from that. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of green just onto the tip. So just a little tiny bit of green, just really soft green, just on the very tip there of the calla lily. And I will do that also on the back. But the thing is, remember, you want to make sure you get rid of your green, because we don't want it to be like a big green blob there. So just a little bit of green just on the very, very tip of the calla. You can see that beautiful color there. Then I'm going to take a little bit of, this is a moss green color. So this moss green color. Also remember, I always personally like to take the color onto a napkin and then brush, so I never take it straight from the pot. And then the darker green, we're going to just sort of put that right at the very bottom. So this is going to just give you this slightly darker green, which is just going to come up from the base. You can have this stronger green going into a paler green going into to the base there. Now we're then going to steam this. So when we steam this, we're going to use a small little closed steamer here. And you can also use a tea kettle. Remember, a tea kettle is a little bit more of a severe steam. Or you can also use a saucepan of water. Just put in about 2.5 centimeters, about an inch of water, a little bit of aluminum foil on the top, make some little holes. So then when the water boils, you get a gentle steam. Because if you put it directly over a pan of water, it's too intense. Remember, we're not giving the flower a sauna. It obviously just needs to be gently steamed. And the steam is now going to come out of here. You can see the steam is coming out. So I'm just going to now just gently pass my calla lily through the steam. Because also remember, we have sugar in here. So where you have the sugar on here, on the spadix, the thing is that if you obviously use too much steam, it's going to basically dissolve the sugar. But you see how you'll have that beautiful natural luster on your calla lily, okay? And then when we have done that, normally I would just hang that upside down or put it into a strong, like a cake dummy or something very stable, okay? You don't want to lay it down when it's sticky. Now, the purple calla lily, which I'm going to show here, purple calla lily, I'm going to use two colors here. This is a sort of mauve-y sort of color, sort of like a mauve. It's called Ondina Rose, which actually is a sort of an English rose variety, Ondina. It's a very pretty purple color. And then I have like a royal purple, which is a bright purple. So this color is too dull, this color is too bright, so I'm actually combining the two together. And what I'm using here, this is actually a 2-to-1 ratio. So it's 2 parts of Ondina Rose. So that means that if you use like a little tiny spoon or a little scoop, you do 2 parts of that and then 1 part of the purple. Now, of course, there are many, many manufacturers of dust-in powders, okay? So, obviously, those of you watching are from all over the world. So, the thing is remember, you know, sometimes you're going to have to mix blend colors. You might find something locally that is obviously going to do the job. The other thing is, of course, when you're doing flowers for a client, it's often going to be what color the client wants. I'm going to blend down. So, this is going to go all over as a base. But I'm going to come down about 3/4 of the way. So I'm going to leave the bottom the natural color. The reason is we're going to be brushing green on there. So unlike the super pearl, if we put purple all the way down to the bottom and then put the green on top of that, what's going to happen is you're going to get like the green is going to be, first of all, you're going to contaminate your green brush with purple. But also when you put green on top of the purple, it's not going to look a nice color. It's going to look a little bit muddled. But you see how you're going to get that? So do you see the difference here? And then we're going to then take the powder here. I'm going to work that into the inside of the flower. Also, of course, you can put gloves on when you do this. You can also, when you're doing colored calla lilies, just put a little touch of color onto the sugar. So you see how I'm actually just touching that spadix with a little bit of the purple as well. Just going to just brush the color around the edge here. Alright, so just work this around so you have that color in the inside of the flower. Just going to work this down like this. Okay, so this is going to give us the sort of like the base color. So this is like, you think of makeup, this is like your foundation. I'm then going to use an aubergine or eggplant color. It's a beautiful color here, and I'm going to now work this onto the edge. So you see how this is going to give us this beautiful color. This is a color I use a lot. It's beautiful on purple, so when you're doing like clematis or sort of any purple flowers, this is really, as I said, a beautiful color, and a color you wouldn't necessarily think would work on purple, but it really does intensify this. So you're just going to work around your edge. So you see how I'm using a flat brush here, but I'm working from the outside, so again the color dissipates as it comes down. So you have this beautiful sort of blended color. You can see that sort of lovely color onto there. Alright. Once we've done that, so we've got the color there, I'm going to take a little bit of apple green. So this is a little bit brighter, and you can see if I sort of compare the moss and the apple together, you see the apple is a lot brighter. So with some apple green there, I'm going to now just take a little bit of apple green, and I'm going to just blend this from the bottom. So you see I'm going to brush my apple green coming up about 2 centimeters, about 3/4 of an inch, and this is really brushed then on just the existing color of the calla lily. So you see how you're going to get this soft color, and it will just sort of blend up. So almost this area here is really just the natural color that we made the calla lily in. Usually I don't put color on the tip here because it's a dark, when you're doing dark colors you won't really see that. And then I'm going to just move this out of the way. But obviously if you do it onto a napkin or paper towel, it works very well. And then I'm going to take just a little bit of white sparkle dust. So this is a sparkle dust, so it's like a pearl dust, but you see it's got larger particles in it, so it's a little bit sparkly. Now you can either use a white version, or you could actually use like a lavender version of this. And what we're going to do here is just going to take some white sparkle, and I'm just going to sort of just gently, just very, very lightly put some of the sparkle onto here. And when we steam this, it's going to just give a little bit of a sort of a slight sort of look, because the calla lily has this little sort of pearlescent look to it. So we're just going to put this onto, just very, very lightly onto the surface. The reason why I wouldn't use pearl dust is, first of all, if we put pearl dust, which is this on top, it would dull the whole thing. But you could use like a lavender pearl. But generally speaking, like on my Flower Pro hydrangea, I use this same concept. It's like an after dust, okay? Whereas super pearl we generally use as like a foundation, like a pre-dust, okay? So you can see here the pearl dust is obviously on the that's the extra large size one. So now we're going to steam this one, okay? So again, we're just going to steam this. So it's going to lightly steam the flower here, and just going to, again, just when this steams, so just going to just lightly hold this in steam here, like so. Alright, that's going to sort of really give you this beautiful dark sort of purple color onto your, and this of course looks a little bit shiny once obviously the steam dries. That's going to give you a nice natural finish. This calla lily was made in this pale green, alright, so I made this in the pale green color. And then what I actually did here is I've used here a light apple green as a base, okay? Then I've used the prairie green with, like I did on the purple, so I brushed around the edge with the prairie green. And I've used a little bit of apple green on the bottom. So basically I've used like three different greens, so all over on the edge on the base, okay? So that's sort of how I did the coloring of this. And then the other calla lily I have here, this actually started off as a peach color, okay? And this color calla lily I've used a lot in the fall autumn time. It's a really beautiful color. And so what I've done there is when I did this one, I actually dusted over with orange. So I went all over the surface with the orange. I then took the aubergine color. So this is like the eggplant aubergine color. Again, so you see how you get this beautiful color on the edge of this. and then I took the apple green, which is the brighter green here, a little bit of apple at the bottom here, and you get this really lovely color then on this calla lily. But of course, these are just some of the many colors calla lilies come in. You know, they come in obviously more pastel colors, but the sort of really lovely purples and the rich colors there are really, really attractive to use. Now, as far as when we finish calla lilies off, calla lily is a flower when it grows like Gerber daisies, anthuriums, flowers like that, tulips and that have basically an exposed stem. And so when you're finishing these off, there are several things we can do here. So first one is you can use tubing. This is made specifically for making handmade silk flowers, and this tubing is flexible. It comes in this sort of color, and it comes in different sizes, actually 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter, 4 and 5. So when you're using this, for example, for small calla lilies, and a little later on I'm going to be showing you how I do an arrangement on top of a cake with floating calla lilies. So basically what you would do here is, if you were going to push this into your cake, if your cake's 7.5 centimeters or 10 centimeters or whatever, you'd measure up from the bottom of the wire to the depth of your cake. So the area exposed above the top of the cake, or if I'm going to put this into a spray, like if I was arranging this with roses, and I had like roses and other flowers that I do in some of my classes. So for example, let's say you had 4 centimeters, that's how long you would cut your tubing. So when we use this, what you'd actually do there is you just will take your tubing, you cut it to the desired length that you want. And of course, you could let the calla lily dry a little bit if you want to. And then you would take the pair of scissors and just cut this. Now you can also use, I have seen people use aquarium tubing for aquariums. That comes in usually a little bit brighter green, but as I said, so there are other options you have as far as tubing goes. And so you're just going to just slide the tubing up the wire, and you see how realistic the stem looks of the calla lily. And you're going to see how lovely this looks when you put this onto an arrangement. So you have this in a spray, and that would be the tubing. And then what you normally do there is you just would take I have here a hot glue gun. You're going to take just a little tiny spot of hot glue and just put a little tiny spot of hot glue there where it actually meets the stem. That just stops it sliding down. Now you can also use, on larger calla lilies, you can use things like drinking straws. This is just a plastic drinking straw. This is a poly dowel. So this is a poly dowel used for, this is a food grade product, but used to obviously dowel cakes. So in the US we use these a lot for sponge cakes, because obviously our cakes are sponge usually. And these work wonderful. They're very easy to cut with scissors. So you can cut this to obviously whatever length you want. So I take some full width floral tape, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a poly dowel or a straw, okay, like this. And I'm going to start just a little bit from the top. You'll see the reason why in a minute. You're going to go round with your floral tape. You see, so I've sort of just extended past the end of there a little bit, a little tiny bit. And then what you're going to do is you're going to stretch your tape. I'm using full width tape, and we're going to just tape down. Don't have to worry too much about this being perfect. And then you're going to then reverse. You're going to come back on yourself, all right? And generally you're going to do this 2 or 3 times, okay? So you're just going to continue down here like this. So you're going to do this. So just if you break your tape off, and you're going to come up to the top, and then you're going to turn it around, and you're going to do the same again. You're going to come down. You can break this off, and you're going to come down a 3rd time, okay? So once you've done this, so this one is three times on here. We're going to use the back of the scissors, and with the back of your scissors you're going to rub over the surface of the floral tape. So what this will help to do, this will help to get rid of your layers of the floral tape, you see? It actually gives a natural shine to this floral tape, but it also gives you a nice smooth surface on here. And so this means that the end part, as I said, this is sort of extended. You see it's a little bit of an extension on the top there. So what we would do here is you just straighten out your wire, and then when you put your calla lily into here, you see the floral tape will, that little like piece of floral tape will just go around the top here. Because in fact in real life this is about the thickness of the stem of the calla lily. And then because your wire is in there, you can flex this. And then what I would normally do if you're doing this technique, you're then going to just come back in with some green. So you can use just a little bit of the moss green color. So because the floral tape is slightly different color, so just where that moss green tape meets the the moss green stem, you're just going to again just almost just put a little bit of the moss green around here like that. And then what I would normally do is I would just again just lightly steam this, because when you're coloring the floral tape, which I do on some of my classes, I put a little bit of dust on the floral tape. You can, if you steam it, what that's going to do is going to set the powder, so the powder won't get onto the. And then again, I'm just going to now just gently go on the top there, and that will give me my calla lily. All right. So here you can see you have the sort of the beautiful calla lily here. When you're doing the slightly smaller white calla lily, of course you can use the, this is actually medium tubing here. So this is the medium thickness tubing. Or here I could actually use the same technique I've just shown you with the poly dowel with a smaller size straw. Okay, so you know, like if you were doing the smaller one, you see you could use that for the handle of the for the stem of the, and see this can be bent here. So whether you use a straw, whether you use a stem here, or you use the sort of plastic tubing, that gives you some options for how to finish off the stem of the calla lily.